Welcome to the Commercial Edge podcast with me, the founder of Foxley, Chris Webber. In each episode, I talk to a different expert. They tell me about their experiences, their ideas, and their knowledge on how to get the best out of people and business. We discuss the issues that are facing businesses and talk through the lessons that they've learned in solving these problems. I'm going to provide you with insight, experiences and tips that you can use to get the most from the people around you and unleash the power of people. So let's meet my guest for today's episode. Today we're continuing our theme about talking on difficult customers, and we're talking about disrespect. So dealing with disrespect. And we've got a whole range of topics that we're going to explore over the next few minutes. We're going to deal with prejudice. We're going to talk about listening. We're going to talk about accidental disrespect and how we can abuse power and be disrespectful that way. So stay listening if you want to deal with disrespectful people in your organization, or you want to avoid some of the traps that we can all fall into. Why is it important? Well, I think given the polarizing nature that we live in at the moment, particularly social media, we hear more and more about the fact that social media is dividing us into camps, that it's easy to post messages and to polarize us. What seems to be happening is we're finding ourselves in a world where listening is hard. We are finding ourselves increasingly reactive to statements that are being made, to reading the headlines and not reading below the lines. And I think the trap is that we're getting into a world where we feel like we know the answers and we're not necessarily taking the time to challenge ourselves. And I think that leads to this element of accidental disrespect. And I think that's the biggest problem. I don't want to talk through this episode in the sense that people are being deliberately disrespectful. I think that my job to support you to deal with difficult customers is to avoid the accidental disrespect that gets in the way of us having great relationships with important customers and important partners, not dealing with people who are deliberately being disrespectful. I think if you're dealing with people who are being deliberately disrespectful, or you're being deliberately disrespectful, that's a whole other problem. So, well, what is it, right? What is respect? Respect comes from your ability to listen to people. One of the biggest things I hear when people complain about disrespect is that they don't feel heard. They don't feel listened to. Now, there's two parts on that, of course, right? The first part of it is, are you actually just paying attention? Are you listening to the words that somebody has said? But that's only phase one. The second phase of it is, are you acting on advice that they might give you? Are you acting on the words that they say and taking those on board? Because those two things are connected when it comes to respect. It's all very well to say, yes, I hear you, but not acting on it is disrespectful. Now, I think that's a good example of this is the engagement surveys. I know, right? I can imagine the groans that are coming across the airwaves here. Businesses are doing so many engagement surveys these days. We're doing a lot of customer feedback surveys, customer engagement feedback surveys. And the problem is we are listening, but are we listening? And the frustration that I hear people talking about when it comes to customer engagement surveys or internal employee surveys is, well, we're saying things, then they're not being acted upon. So you might make a complaint about stuff. I think a good example would be flexible working. It's, flexible working has definitely ramped up in terms of conversations since COVID, but going back 15 years ago, I was having conversations with my team about flexible working, about being more able to take on board issues. And particularly I'm thinking about a conversation I had with one of the ladies in the team who just had young children. She had twins, and she wanted to move towards more flexible working arrangements. And at the time, you had to put in an application to the organisation, who decided whether they could afford to be more flexible working. I don't know if things have changed these days. I'm not quite up to date with the legislation, but that's the way it was in those days. So this is not a new topic. And at the time, people felt really frustrated by what they felt was a dismissive attitude of organizations towards proposals that they made. Requests that they felt were reasonable were not being heard, and they felt it was disrespectful. And the same thing is echoed on and on and on when it comes to things like employment surveys, where employees talk about flexible working, they talk about other elements, other issues that they want the management to hear, and then management do nothing. Then it causes frustration, causes tension, because the employment team, the employees feel, what's the point? They're just being disrespectful. They're just being dismissive. The same is true with customer surveys. We ask our customers for feedback. Do we really listen to that feedback? Do we really take on board the things that they're telling us that we need to change? It's really easy to say, that's just an exception. But what's funny is that if one customer writes a glowing review of our ways of working, our service, we'll show it to people. It's a great example of how amazing we are. When we get the same feedback from a customer who is challenging our ways of working, well, it's very easy to disrespect that, to say, what does it matter? It's just one person. Who cares? And I think that's the difficulty we have here when it comes to respect, that we struggle to connect listening and action. So you can hear people, but you don't really act on them. And then the third area that comes up is about being closed-minded, being prejudiced. So before we even get into a conversation, I'm just going to dismiss whatever it is you're going to say because you are not someone that I respect. Oh, goodness me, that's a huge problem. Whatever it might be, prejudice is massive. We get so frustrated, whether that is religious prejudice, whether it is gender bias, whether it is age related. I don't listen to what that you say because you're too young. I don't listen to what you say because you're too old. I mean, goodness me. Disrespect across age groups and across social groups is huge. We prejudice the feelings that other people say. And so another way that we can be disrespectful. So what does it look like? What do these things actually look like? Well, I think the first one is about, are we really present in meetings? Are we really paying attention? I do a lot of online meetings, and I'm certainly not alone. Lots of people do lots of online meetings. But the easiest thing to do when you're in an online meeting is to become distracted. Everything is there in front of you. All those other windows are there. You've got pop-ups on your screen coming in. You can leave the meeting, inverted commas, and no one knows. You could be sitting there looking at your camera whilst reading emails. And yes, it's possible to see. I'm fortunate or unfortunate that many of the meetings I'm involved in online, I'm leading. And therefore, I have to concentrate. I have to be there in the room. But when I'm looking at the screen and I can see that I'm sharing a dark slide and the reflection in someone's glasses is light, then I know that they're likely to be reading an email or reading a pop-up or looking at something else. I can see that. People are not present in meetings. And it's because we have so much distraction. And when we're not present, we are physically not listening. We're definitely not paying attention to what is being said during the conversation. So whether we like it or not, we are turned off. If I ask you a question, or if someone asks you a question about what's going in the meeting, then you can't answer that question. Now, I'm not saying you're deliberately being disrespectful, you're just getting distracted. The problem is that it comes across as disrespectful. It comes across as what you're saying to someone is, this meeting is not as important as the message that's just popped up on my screen. Now you think about that. It's not what you're saying. But if that's what someone understands, that this message on my screen right now is more interesting than what it is that you're saying to me, then how are they feeling? Human connection is about making people feel important. Making people feel special. Some of the people who we really connect with are the ones who make us feel center of the universe, even for a few minutes. And what you've done in that call, in distracting and picking up your phone, is saying, nah, you're not that important. When that's a customer, when that's a colleague, when that's a way of working across your organization, what's the culture that you're creating? The culture you're creating is a meh. Like, who cares? I'm too important. I've got other things that are more important than you. I don't want to be here. It doesn't elevate your status in my mind. In fact, it reduces your status. And certainly if you're trying to deal with customers and you are distracted, then what culture are you saying to them? They're not going to want to do business with you. Now, the funny thing is, people will say, Chris, you see, I don't do it with customer meetings. No. Customer meetings, I'm 100% focused. It's all about them during that meeting. But you are dealing with colleagues and you're not. It creates bad habits. What I want you to start thinking about is really paying attention to your focus. Train your brain to focus. Close other apps. Put your phone away so that you cannot be distracted during our conversation. And then you really are making them feel important. Because I guarantee that whilst you say to me the customer is really important, if I was a fly on the wall in your meetings, I bet you I could still find notifications coming up on your screen. So what about prejudice? What does that really look like? Well, imagine you're in a pitch, you're in a meeting internally, and someone has come to you with an idea about a new social media platform. The person who's pitching you the idea happens to be new in the organization, very young, and has come with certain ideas. And the message you're hearing from people is that they're not yet embedded into the culture of the organization. What are you going to think about the ideas that they put on the table? Most of us would taint our listening to their conversation with a sense of, I don't know if this is going to be a great idea, because they're young, because they're new, because they don't know how we work. That's the kind of prejudice that I'm talking about. Just enough to stain the thinking, to shift you, to bias you against their idea. What about if you're going into a meeting with someone you know has often given you terrible ideas? Your approach will often be to look for the problems in their arguments, to spend their presentation making notes on why it isn't going to work. That's also a prejudice. It's also disrespectful because we're closed-minded. A really key element to being respectful of people is to have the discipline to be open-minded to what it is that they're going to say to us, regardless of where they come from. Because when we don't do that, we close down ideas, and we close down those ideas at our peril. Life is really competitive. all of us are operating in very competitive marketplaces with customers who've got significant amounts of choices, with employees who can switch jobs now easily. In fact, sometimes the most difficult thing about changing jobs now is that you're going to get a new laptop because actually you work from home, or certainly many of us are working from home. And so being open-minded to ideas could be an opportunity for you. It could be an opportunity for you to get a commercial advantage in a marketplace which otherwise will be tough. The final thing I want to just talk about when it comes to disrespect is about how we deal with the small person, customers who are small. I've seen organizations abuse power. They don't need the whole marketplace. They don't need to talk to everybody in business. And so they choose who they want to do business with. Could be that they're only seeking a certain segment of the marketplace. And then they start to disregard customers who are small. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this recently and saying, well, I find it really interesting that people had kind of opportunity sizes within their pipeline, and they would just cut out anyone that seemed too small. And that's disrespectful, because they are saying to you, you are not big enough for me to want to do business with. And there's a danger there, because the danger is that with social media as it is, with the way that people communicate quickly and easily, your reputation can be shot in almost no time at all. And so your ability to control the message is about being respectful to everybody. How you communicate with customers when you have power says more than about how you communicate when you don't. When you don't have power, everybody wants to use relationships to build trust. I hear this so often, that if you don't have power because the customer has more choices than you, then what you want to do, we want to build a strong relationship, we want to build trust, we want to be creative and flexible. It's when you do have power that matters on how you treat people. And so what I want you to focus on and think about is, how do you deal with people that are not important? That could be people in your organization who are very junior. Do you disrespect them? It could be customers who are very small. Do you give them the time and energy and resources that they really need to feel valued, to feel important? Because if you don't, then you are being accidentally disrespectful, and you are risking the future of yourself and your organization. So, how do you avoid the trap of being accidentally disrespectful? Challenge yourself to really listen. Challenge yourself to really pay attention to people. Make yourself in the room. Turn off apps, turn off your phones, put it away, put it in your pocket. Be there and really listen to what people are selling you. And challenge yourself to act on their advice. Be open to, what if? Maybe I could do that. Maybe we could do this. Too often we disrespect ideas because, well, it's not the way we've always done things, or it's not what I see as being important. If you're going to listen to customers, if you're going to listen to staff, if you're going to listen to colleagues, then at least take on board what they're saying, because there might be something in it. Be curious. Be curious to open your mind to what it is that they're saying to you. Be curious to understand why they've come up with that idea. If someone tells you that you need to be more flexible in the way that you approach it, something has triggered that thought from them. What is it you've missed? Actively break silos. Easy to prejudice when we have silos. So sales versus marketing, finance, supply chain. These guys are working against us. They don't want to work with us. They have their own ways of thinking. They're not open to our ideas. All of that becomes disrespectful and damaging to culture, particularly if that applies to customers. When you start judging customers on their approach too, break the silos. Don't just judge the customer on how you feel or what you expect them to say or what you expect them to do. Be curious, challenge yourself. And actively create mixed groups. Actively challenge yourself to bring people with different ideas into your conversations. If you become an echo chamber of people who sound like you, then you're trapping yourself into a disrespect for people who have a different idea to you. It's a great strategy to really open yourself up to market opportunities to listen to everyone. Who knows what idea you might be ignoring by only listening to people who are saying what you want to say. I hope this is a really interesting episode. I'd love you to share with me some thinking around opportunities to be more respectful and listen to people and to pay more attention, or any examples of stories where you feel like someone has been disrespectful to you. I'd love to hear your tales of disrespect. Be careful. It's easy to be accidentally disrespectful, but it's also so easy to be respectful and to make people seem important. That is the opportunity you have. Make others feel important, make them feel special, and you will have a commercial advantage and get a commercial edge. Another great episode, and I hope you found it valuable. Don't miss the skill sprint with my headline tips from this episode, and we'll be back with another expert guest soon. If you enjoyed it, why not share it with a friend? And for more like this, look me up on LinkedIn and subscribe to the newsletters. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Thanks for listening.